Lately, I've been enjoying filming this type of video where I have my journaling Bible and I'm kind of just talking you through what I've been reading and studying in the Bible. I feel like it's more like a conversation when you guys interact with me in the comments. So lately, I've been reading 1 Samuel and it's been so good. I've been learning so much. And I'm not going to get into depth on 1 Samuel because that needs its own video. It needs several videos. It's such a rich chapter of the Bible. But rather, I'm just going to point out just the beautiful relationship that I have just been reading about between David and Jonathan, and how we can learn from Jonathan and apply that to our own lives and our relationships. And so I said it in a few videos ago. Actually, it's been a few months now. I don't remember which video it was, but I was talking about the importance of relationships. And I said, having solid friendships in community could even be placed, even more important, as a higher importance than getting married, because not everyone is going to get married. Not everyone is meant to be married. Not everyone wants to get married, but everyone needs solid friendships that they can lean on, people that they can trust, that they can rely on. That is vital. And as Christians, we should be that kind of friend to each other. We should be able to rely on each other. And so just reading here in 1 Samuel chapter 18, it says, verse 1, after David had finished talking with Saul, Jonathan became one in spirit with David, and he loved him as himself. From that day, Saul kept David with him and did not let him return home to his family. And Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. Jonathan took off the robe he was wearing and gave it to David, along with his tunic and even his sword, his bow, and his belt. So just with that one scripture, there's a few qualities here that I want to just hone in on. And just for some context too, Saul is the king. He's currently the king. But if you were with me a couple of videos ago, I was talking about Samuel, and the Lord told Samuel that Saul will not be king. And the Lord was sending Samuel to anoint David as king. And so Saul is starting to catch on to David, and he is wanting to bring David down. He wants David out of here. And he tries to kill David many times. And he tries to do a lot to David. But, David's life, and especially going back and forth with Saul, is just a testament to, it doesn't matter what any human tries to do. What God has for you, he has for you. No one can stop it. And God will protect you, and he will see it through. You may end up, in the prison, just like Joseph, when his brothers threw him into slavery. He had to go through a lot. He ended up in a prison. But eventually he was the second in command in Egypt. So don't let anyone's, anything that anyone throws in your path sway you from remembering what God has for you. But that's a different video for a different time. So Saul, he did not like David. He wanted to get rid of him. And Jonathan is Saul's son. And so, if Saul is not going to be king, then the next person to be king, that made sense would be Jonathan, right? But the first trait that Jonathan exudes is selflessness. And selflessness is a quality that we as humans can all work on, because as humans, we're all naturally selfish. It's so easy to get caught up in what someone didn't do for you, what your parents didn't do for you, or what your mom did to you that was wrong, or what your dad did to you that caused this trauma, and what other people did to you, what your friend did to hurt you, what whoever did to hurt you. And while I don't want to invalidate anyone's hurt, it's even more powerful to not focus on that, but rather focus on other people and how can I serve and bless other people despite what I've been through. And Jonathan could have easily become very jealous of David. And, he could have conspired with Saul to get rid of David, because then Jonathan would be king. But he wasn't even thinking in that way. It said he loved him as himself. And isn't that what Jesus said was the second most important thing? Jesus said the first important thing is to love God above everything else. And the second is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. And so loving other people, truly loving other people, means that we are able to put their needs and what they want with balance, of course. We're talking about balance here, but ahead of our own needs and ahead of our own wants. And Jonathan, he was a man of God, and he, I'm sure, he thought about all these things. I'm sure he thought about, okay, well, my dad, he could be the successor. But instead of that, he knew that he should support David. And so Jonathan becomes a great ally to David and helps to, avoid him from getting killed by his dad. Jonathan helps David to avoid getting killed by Saul, Jonathan's dad, just wanted to clarify. And so, yeah, that selflessness is it's a beautiful thing. The second thing is David served. So not only did he love David, the second thing is that Jonathan served. So not only did he love David as he loved himself, and it says it twice, he loved him as himself. And Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. It says it twice here. So the way that Jonathan served, one of the ways is he gave. He took off his robe and he was wearing it and he gave it. He gave, right? And what does that remind me of? It reminds me of God. When, God so loved the world, so he gave his one and only son. So giving is a primary act when it comes to your relationships. It doesn't matter if you're married, if you're a parent, if you're a friend, if you're a teacher. It's important that we sustain a balance of giving. It's also important that you maintain relationships where someone is not constantly taking, right? Someone should not constantly be taking. And I don't necessarily always mean taking items, but, if you're the friend that's always listening and you don't have the friend that's willing to stop and say, hey, how are you? Tell me about you. Let me listen to you. That's not balanced. So keep that in mind as well. But when thinking about relationships, we should think about, how can I give to this person? It doesn't have to be stuff. It could be time. It could be, listening, just like I said. It's so important to pour into others. And Jonathan took off the robe he was wearing, the things he had on his body, the things that were very important to him, near and dear to him, his sword, his bow, his belt. He said, here, you can have that. He truly loved David and he was there for him. Jonathan, he was riding for David. He was there for him. And this is just one example. There's so many examples in 1 Samuel, but I'm just going to read you one example. This is 1 Samuel 19. Saul told his son Jonathan and all the attendants to kill David. But Jonathan had taken a great liking to David and warned him, my father Saul is looking for a chance to kill you. Be on your guard tomorrow morning. Go into hiding and stay there. I will go out and stand with my father in the field where you are. I'll speak to him about you and I will tell you what I find out. Jonathan was loyal. And sometimes we may have people in our lives that, even if they're blood, that will try to bring us away, keep us away from people who we should have in our lives, And imagine Jonathan listened to his dad, Saul. He would have not been able to experience this great friendship with David. And there's just so many times where, Jonathan warned David because he really cared about him. And eventually, Jonathan ended up dying. And we read in 2 Samuel chapter 1, David, he is saddened for Saul and Jonathan, for both of them. But he says here about Jonathan, he says, this is 2 Samuel chapter 1, verse 23. Saul and Jonathan, in life they were loved and admired, and in death they were not parted. They were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions. Daughters of Israel, weep for Saul, who clothed you in scarlet and finery, who adorned your garments with ornaments of gold. How the mighty have fallen in battle. Jonathan lies slain on your heights. I grieve for you, Jonathan, my brother. You were very dear to me. Your love for me was wonderful, more wonderful than that of women. That kind of reminds me of what I said earlier, that, having a good friend could even be, and having that community, it could even be even more important than, necessarily going to get married. But what I was just trying to show here was how David appreciated Saul so much and he grieved for him. He was his brother, his brother in spirit. And I just thought that the relationship between Jonathan and Saul, just reading through 1 Samuel, it was just really nice. Really nice. And if any of you out there have a friend that has consistently poured into your life, pour into their lives, because eventually, if you don't, that person's going to walk away. And so it's important to pour into others in this society where everyone is incredibly self-serving. Take a step back and serve someone else, and exude the traits of Jonathan that I talked about in today's video. So that's all I had for today. Let me know if you like this style of video, and if so, I mean, I don't know, just let me know your thoughts. I post a new Bible study video on Wednesdays and Fridays at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I can't wait to study the Bible with you again. Bye.